Judicial Service Commission has requested President Ramaphosa suspend the presiding judges in multiple cases, including that of Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. Judges Chifiwa Mamela as well as Nomonde Mbekezeli have come under scrutiny over their failure to make judgment to deliver reserved judgments in a reasonable time. So here to give us a little bit more of context to the conversation is Mbekezeli Benjamin, Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matter. Mbekezeli, always a pleasure speaking to you. A very good morning. Welcome to the morning show. Let's talk a little bit about the significance of this. Mlambo's complaint against Judges Chifiwa Mamela as well as Nomonde Mbekezeli.
Good morning, Faith, and to the viewers at home. Well, the complaint is significant because here it is the judge president of a high court laying a complaint against his own judges. And he does so because of the failure by the two judges to deliver judgments on time. And the reason it is also significant is because now the JSC has taken quite a drastic step to order that a tribunal be established to investigate the two judges, but also that they be placed on suspension while that tribunal unfolds.
It certainly is very significant on that place, but that means that certainly there is something wrong with these judges. I mean, we speak about the judges. One such, for example, Mamela, is presiding over the Senzo Meyiwa trial. A very controversial, very high-profile trial. South Africans are glued to their screens because of this. So what could these judges actually have been found guilty of, and how severe are these accusations? Because to remove them or to request that they be suspended immediately, it means that it's not a small faith. There's something that went wrong, horrifically wrong on their behalf.
Yeah, so the judicial norms and standards say that a judge must deliver judgment within 3 months of the hearing. The complaint that has been filed against the two judges is that they've taken much longer. In one of the cases, it has been running on since 2018, and the judge, in another case, the judge took about 24 to 29 months to deliver a judgment. So it is really, really long, and that becomes really, really serious, and which is why there is this tribunal investigation into them. Whether this will disrupt their day-to-day activities is not necessarily clear, because in terms of the suspension and the conditions of the suspension, the judge cannot be allocated any new cases from the date of the suspension, but they need to still finalize the cases that they're dealing with. So, for example, the Senzo Meyiwa trial, that judge will still continue to preside over that case because he's already started the case. He's already heard the evidence, and he's already heard the witnesses who've come to testify at court. So it will proceed even though he will be on suspension.
Just clarify that part for us a little bit, Mbekezeli. So Judge Mamela will continue to preside over the Senzo Meyiwa trial, even though the JSC has requested from the president that he be suspended. What makes us think that he will not repeat the exact same behavior and actually extend the reserved time of actually giving some kind of judgment?
So, yes. So what happens now is that the president, let's say, will say that the judge will be suspended from the 1st of June. He will still continue to hear the Senzo Meyiwa trial, like I said, but he will not be allocated any new cases. So that means that the workload that he will have to deal with is much less, because what he's been suspended for is for actually writing the judgments. And they say that he's taking too long to write the judgments. What he's currently doing in the Senzo Meyiwa trial is presiding over a trial, making sure that the witnesses testify, making sure that all the procedure is followed and that the law is followed when the trial commences. Now, because he'll have a lesser workload to deal with and he'll only be focusing on this one case, he's more likely to finish it in time and not take as long as he has done in the previous cases. So that is the idea behind making him continue in the cases that he started while being on suspension. But there's also just another dynamic to it, is that if he was to be removed from the case that he's already started, that means the whole case will have to start from scratch before a new judge, and that is even more disruptive, because that means all the witnesses who have so far testified would have to come back and testify again, which would be unfair on them as the witnesses, but also on the victims and the families involved in this trial.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the jurisdiction of President Ramaphosa. This is not the very first time that the JSC has written a submission to the president, the head of state, to actually remove a judge or to suspend a judge. You, of course, would remember the case of Judge John Hlophe and how extensive that was. So it's not the first time, but what is the jurisdiction? And I mean, what kind of privileges is afforded to the president, and how much time must he actually act? What if he decides, you know what, actually, I'm not going to act on this one. We continue as business as usual. Can he do that? Does he have the mandate to do that?
Well, the president may possibly, theoretically, he may decide not to suspend the two judges, but he would have to have really strong, concrete reasons to do so. In the past, I've never seen a president not follow the advice of the JSC to suspend a judge, because the JSC is an expert body that knows how the judiciary works, and so the president is more likely to follow through with the suspension. And like you said, in the past, he has suspended judges before. Usually it takes about a month for the president to act on the JSC's advice. So I expect that the president will announce the formal suspension before the end of this month. And so usually the president has very limited jurisdiction. So he has very limited leeway in terms of disagreeing with the JSC's advice on suspending the two judges.
Yeah, and I mean, when it comes to, and I'm playing devil's advocate purely here, right? Because numerous judges will say that it takes time, extensive considerations before an actual judgment is actually made, right? So there is a sense of pressure from presiding judges to make a decision, to make it quite timelessly. But should these kinds of decisions be rushed? And how much time actually should be given to a judge to make a judgment call, whether it's a reserve, instead of reserving the judgment? Because clearly here, that's what we're missing, is that if they're not actually meeting the time frame, how much time should be allocated for these cases?
So the norms and standards is the legal standard that is used, and it says that a judge must try by all means to finish a judgment within 3 months. Most judges, the overwhelming majority, are able to produce a judgment well within the 3 months. But some cases are much more complex. They require additional research. And so they will take a little bit longer than that, so maybe 4 up to 5 months in order to deliver the judgment. But there's another factor in this. Pretoria is an extremely busy court, right? It's the busiest court in the country. The workload is incredibly heavy, and we know that there is a lack of judges there as well, so they are under pressure. But the other complexity is that the research capacity. You know, in the Constitutional Court, each and every one of the judges of the Constitutional Court has 3 researchers allocated to them. In Pretoria, 45 judges share 6 researchers amongst all of them. So there is that complexity in that context. But at the same time, the judges are required to produce the work, and taking over 12 months to 24 months is completely unreasonable, which is why we're seeing them being referred to a tribunal.
Yeah, it is very quite concerning actually to actually see the JSC request from the president to suspend 2 judges now. But the actual cases that they're presiding over, they get to finish that tenure whilst they're in suspension. But if those judges get, for some odd reason, struck off the roll, if we find that actually they did something grossly unfavorable or without integrity, does that not then give leeway to those that have had judgments placed against them by the very same judges to come back to a court of law and say, hang on a second, the judge that presided over my case was a judge that was not a judge of integrity. In fact, that judge was suspended and subsequently removed. Therefore, I demand a review of my complete case. Does that not give leeway for a complete turnaround strategy of anybody that has been convicted, anybody that has been prosecuted in a court of law that was presided over these judges?
Well, that is very unlikely. It's highly unlikely for that kind of thing to happen, because for you to request a review, you'd have to look at the merits of the case and look at the law. Did the judge do anything in terms of the law that was incorrect? So the way that the judge interpreted the law and applied the law in that particular case, was it wrong? You can't simply say because a judge was sort of disciplined for an unrelated case, then possibly there might be something that happened in your case. It doesn't necessarily work like that. But even so, even if, let's say, if a situation like that were to happen, usually it would be referred to a higher court, so it would be probably going appeal before a different court made up of 3 judges who look at the case and determine the merits of that case. But from my view, it is unlikely to happen.
Mbekezeli, it definitely is a developing story. I'm sure that we'll be touching base with each other time and time again as we get to review exactly what's happening within our judicial system. Mbekezeli Benjamin is actually a researcher and advocacy officer at Judges Matter, giving us more about the Senzo Meyiwa trial and subsequently the judge that is presiding over, where the request has been made by the JSC to actually suspend that particular judge.